It's a strange thing, really. A strange and almost invisible kind of suffering that so many people carry, yet almost no one ever speaks about. You may look at your life and say, well, everything is fine. You have a place to sleep, food on your table, a routine to follow. Nothing is catastrophically wrong. Nothing is dramatically falling apart. And yet somewhere beneath the surface, there's this dull ache, this quiet confusion, this sense that something is missing, though you can't quite name what it is. It's not depression. Not exactly. Not anxiety. Not exactly. It's more like a faint spiritual dizziness. A feeling of being slightly out of alignment with the world, like your soul is wearing clothes that don't fit. And here's the curious thing. This feeling often grows strongest when your life is at its most stable, when everything appears normal from the outside, when everyone around you says, you should be grateful, you have everything you need. But inside, something whispers, is this really all there is? Is this what life is supposed to feel like? It's a peculiar kind of lostness, because nothing is dramatically wrong, and yet nothing feels profoundly right. You wake up, you go to work, you check your phone, you go through the motions. The days blur together like pages in a book you're not really reading. You do what you're supposed to do, what you've been taught to do, what everyone else seems to be doing. And yet there's a subtle emptiness in it, like chewing food without flavor. The world tells you that if your life looks fine, then you must be fine. But you know better. You feel the truth in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when the noise of the world fades and you're left alone with that soft, persistent question. Why do I feel lost, even when nothing is wrong? And here is the beautiful but uncomfortable truth. You're not lost because you've done something wrong. You're lost because you've been living inside a story that was never truly yours. A story handed to you by society, by culture, by family, by expectation, one that tells you what success looks like, what happiness looks like, what a good life is supposed to be. But the soul doesn't care about stories. It wants truth. It wants alignment. It wants to live from the inside out, not the outside in. And when your outer life stops matching your inner life, when you re-following a path that your heart never chose, your spirit starts sending you signals. Gentle ones at first, restlessness, a sense of drifting, a longing you can't explain. And eventually, if ignored long enough, that quiet whisper becomes a roar. But here's the thing. This lostness is not a mistake. It is an invitation. An invitation to look more closely, to listen more deeply, to awaken to the possibility that life is far more mysterious, far more fluid, far more beautiful than the rigid little box you've been trying to fit into. And once you understand that, your entire relationship with feeling lost begins to change. There is a strange kind of suffering that hides inside people whose lives, from the outside, appear perfectly assembled. It is not the agony of catastrophe, nor the grief of visible loss. It is softer, subtler, a quiet ache that lives beneath routines, beneath small talk, beneath the smiling photos that suggest everything is all right. And perhaps this is why it hurts even more. Pain without a narrative feels like a betrayal by one's own soul. Alan Watts often suggested that modern suffering is not always born from what is wrong, but from what is missing. We have learned to build lives that are structurally sound yet spiritually hollow, homes with walls, but no windows to the infinite. Careers with ladders but no sky. Relationships with comfort but little communion. And so people walk around feeling strangely misplaced in their own existence, as though they took a wrong turn somewhere, though all their decisions seemed correct at the time. This is the paradox of modern life. Everything looks fine, yet nothing feels true. You wake up, you work, you fulfill your obligations. You do what the world has trained you to do, and still something inside whispers, this isn't it. This isn't why you came here. But you don't know what it is, and so the whisper becomes a kind of fog that settles over the heart. Watts said that this feeling arises when the soul has been exiled to make room for the persona. The persona is the mask you wear, the version of you that fits into society as reasonable expectations. It speaks politely, behaves predictably, achieves responsibly. But the soul is unruly, curious, enchanted, wild. And when it is ignored, it doesn't scream, it withdraws. Most people aren't suffering from failure, they're suffering from disconnection. A disconnection from their own depth, their own wonder, their own inner calling. They are like musicians who learned to play the notes perfectly, but forgot the music. Everything functions, nothing flows. Feeling lost, in this sense, is not a sign that your life is broken. It is a sign that your soul is waking up. It is the first tremor before a deeper truth emerges, the early signal that something essential within you refuses to be satisfied with the superficial. This is not a crisis. It's a summons. There comes a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when the soul begins to rebel, not loudly, not with dramatic gestures, but with a quiet refusal to participate in the script you've been handed. The script of success, of stability, of being sensible. Alan Watts often said that humans suffer because they try to live according to maps, instead of exploring the actual territory of their being. And the modern world gives us very convincing maps. Education, career, marriage, productivity, milestones, retirement. Follow the map, they say, and you will arrive at happiness. But the soul does not care for maps. It is the territory. And so the revolt begins in the smallest ways. You wake up one morning and feel strangely disconnected from the person who is living your life. You catch yourself smiling at a gathering and realize the smile isn't yours. You feel restless in conversations that once felt normal. You achieve something you were told to desire and feel nothing. That nothingness is not failure. It is the soul rejecting a counterfeit life. Watts described this as going through the motions, a kind of spiritual sleepwalking where the body continues but the spirit lingers somewhere else, waiting for the truth. Modern life encourages this division by rewarding the persona and ignoring the soul. You are praised for being busy, not for being alive. You are admired for being productive, not for being present. You are valued for meeting expectations, not for discovering yourself. The tragedy is that many people interpret this inner revolt as personal weakness, as laziness, confusion, or emotional instability. But confusion is simply the mind becoming aware that its old beliefs no longer make sense. It is the beginning of clarity, not the end of it. When the soul revolts, it is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to return you to it. The feeling of being lost is the soul pulling away from the inauthentic. The emptiness is your inner world refusing to be fed by imitation meaning. The disorientation is your spirit turning away from borrowed dreams. And what remains after the persona cracks is the raw, trembling truth that you have no idea what you truly want. But that is precisely where the real journey begins. Once the soul begins to stir, many people instinctively look outward for answers. They seek meaning in new jobs, new relationships, new possessions, new experiences, anything to fill the emptiness that gnaws quietly from within. But the more you chase the world's promises, the more you feel adrift. Alan Watts often said that the greatest misunderstanding of modern life is thinking that fulfillment is a destination. We pile one achievement atop another, believing the next trophy, the next vacation, the next promotion will finally settle the restless ache. Yet the ache persists. It grows, subtly, like water finding cracks in stone. This is because the lostness isn't caused by what's missing outside. It's caused by what has been ignored inside. The soul doesn't want more things. It wants presence. It wants awareness. It wants to feel the depth of being alive rather than the surface of achievement. You may feel frustrated, even angry, at yourself. Why can't I be happy when my life looks perfect? You ask. The answer is simple, yet profoundly unsettling. Life doesn't conform to our narratives. It doesn't care if your calendar is full, your bank account healthy, or your resume impressive. The soul measures truth differently. And the moment you start looking inward, even a little, the journey changes. You realize that the search itself, the restless movement from distraction to distraction, is not the way. The way is to pause, to notice, to breathe, to feel the quiet emptiness not as a problem, but as a door. Because paradoxically, it is in letting go of the frantic need to fix yourself that clarity begins to emerge. We live in a world that constantly tells us how life should look. The perfect career, the perfect relationships, the perfect image of ourselves projected online in photographs, in social media posts. And slowly, quietly, our soul begins to notice the dissonance. It notices that the polished exterior, the checklist of achievements, the neat little boxes we've been taught to tick, none of it touches the depth of who we are. Alan Watts often spoke of the illusion of perfection. He said that we suffer not because life is inherently cruel, but because we insist it conform to our ideas of what is right or good or enough. We are so preoccupied with measuring ourselves against an external standard that we forget to measure the one thing that truly matters, our own inner experience. This illusion is a trap. It seduces us into believing that if only we could perfect our circumstances, the job, the partner, the home, the image, then finally we would feel whole. And yet, even when the circumstances align, the ache often remains, because the soul was never seeking perfection. It was seeking truth. It was seeking connection to life itself, raw and unfiltered. And so the feeling of being lost is not a defect. It is a sign. A sign that the soul is waking up, shaking off the conditioning, questioning the story you have been told. The emptiness you feel is not a void to be filled with things, accolades, or distractions. It is a space inviting you to notice, to pause, to reconnect with your own being. To awaken to this truth is to realize that life does not need to be fixed, it only needs to be felt. The perfection we chase is an illusion. The peace we crave is already present when we stop resisting life as it is, when we stop comparing ourselves to a fabricated standard, and when we allow ourselves to simply be. Lostness, then, is not failure. It is a doorway. A doorway to a deeper understanding that life cannot be contained in schedules or plans, lists or expectations. It is a call to return to yourself, to listen to the quiet whispers of your own soul, to inhabit the body, the mind, the breath, fully and without judgment. And the moment you take even one step into that awareness, the subtle transformation begins. You start to feel life differently, not because the world has changed, but because you have. One of the greatest illusions modern life has sold us is the idea that control equals safety. That if we plan meticulously, arrange perfectly, and hold tightly to the strings of our existence, we can avoid the discomfort of uncertainty. And yet, ironically, the tighter we grip, the more lost we feel. Alan Watts often reminded us that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced. The moment we try to orchestrate every detail, we resist the natural flow of existence, and in that resistance, we suffer. The lostness, the restlessness, the aching emptiness, it all stems from this quiet struggle, trying to contain the uncontainable. When you surrender, you do not give up. You do not abandon your life. You simply stop forcing it to fit into a mold that was never yours. You stop measuring your worth against someone else's blueprint of happiness. And in that release, paradoxically, freedom emerges. To surrender is not weakness. It is an act of courage. It is the soul saying, I trust life enough to follow its rhythm, even if I cannot see the path ahead. And in that trust, a profound aliveness begins to awaken. You start to notice the subtle beauty of moments you had been rushing past. The quiet laughter of a friend, the gentle rhythm of your own breath, the soft sunlight spilling across a room, all become windows to presence, to meaning, to connection with something larger than yourself. Watts said that trying to cling to certainty is like trying to hold water in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. But if you cup your hands gently, allowing it to flow naturally, you experience its fullness. Life too demands this gentle letting go. And here is the profound shift. The more you release control, the less lost you feel. The emptiness that once frightened you begins to feel like space to breathe, to explore, to listen to your own inner voice. You start to realize that life is not about arriving at some predetermined right place, but about being fully present with wherever you are. Lostness transforms from a curse into a guide. The confusion, the restlessness, the quiet ache, they are no longer enemies but signals. Signals pointing you toward the life you were always meant to live. The life that emerges naturally when you stop forcing it and start surrendering to it. As the soul awakens and control begins to loosen, another truth reveals itself. Meaning is not something you chase, something you find by rearranging the world, or something that arrives when everything falls into place. Meaning is always present. It is woven into the fabric of the ordinary, waiting patiently for you to notice. Alan Watts often spoke of this simple, paradoxical insight. Life is not a journey to a distant reward. It is happening here now, in every moment. The sun rising, the rain falling, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, all are invitations to presence, to awaken from the trance of busyness and distraction. Yet most of us miss it. We are too busy pursuing some abstract notion of fulfillment, too caught up in the story of what life should be, to realize that fulfillment has always been quietly breathing beside us. Presence is not about doing more. It is about noticing, feeling, listening, allowing yourself to inhabit the moment without judgment. without expectation, without striving. When you cultivate this awareness, the restlessness that once gnawed at you begins to soften. The ache of being lost becomes gentler, like a signal rather than a wound. And here's the miracle. In presence, the soul recognizes itself. You begin to see that happiness is not a distant goal, that peace is not a reward to be earned. They are not objects to acquire. They are states of being, arising naturally when you stop running from life and start engaging with it fully. Even the smallest acts become profound. Washing the dishes, feeling the wind on your face, sharing a genuine conversation. Ordinary life becomes extraordinary when you inhabit it fully. The lostness that once seemed unbearable now becomes a compass, pointing you toward authenticity, toward alignment with the self that has always been there beneath the noise and the expectations. Alan Watts reminded us that the present moment is all there ever is, and all that is ever needed. The past and future exist only in memory and imagination. When you release the need to control outcomes, when you surrender to the unfolding of life, the lostness dissolves into clarity. You are not lacking, you are awakening. You are not broken, you are becoming whole. And this is where the soul whispers its most profound truth. Meaning is not somewhere to find, it is already here. In the breath, in the heartbeat, in the quiet awareness of simply being. And now we arrive at the quiet revelation that the journey of feeling lost was never about failure. The ache, the restlessness, the subtle disquiet, they were not punishments, not mistakes, not flaws. They were invitations. Invitations from the soul to wake up, to notice, to remember that life cannot be lived fully from the outside in. It must be lived from the inside out. Alan Watts often said that the sense of being lost is the beginning of freedom. The moment you accept that you do not have all the answers, that life will not conform to your plans, that perfection is an illusion, that moment is the turning point. You begin to see that the very thing that frightened you, the emptiness, the confusion, is in fact a space of possibility. A space where the old stories fall away, where the masks slip, and where your true self can finally breathe. Lostness is not a curse. It is a mirror. It reflects what you have been ignoring, the vast, untamed, infinite part of yourself that cannot be measured by success, possessions, or approval. When you embrace it, when you stop fighting the quiet ache and instead allow yourself to explore it, you begin to move toward wholeness. This wholeness does not mean having everything figured out. It does not mean your life will suddenly be perfect. It means you start living in harmony with your own depth. You begin to find joy in the ordinary, peace in uncertainty, and meaning in moments that once seemed trivial. You awaken to the beauty of impermanence, to the rhythm of change, and to the understanding that life itself is enough. And the most profound truth of all, the feeling of being lost never fully disappears, nor should it. It remains as a gentle companion, a guide, a reminder that life is vast, mysterious, and far more intricate than your mind can ever contain. To walk with it is to walk fully awake. To feel it is to feel alive. So if you have ever felt lost, even when your life looks fine, remember this. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are awakening. The ache is the signal. The lostness is the doorway. And the life you are seeking, the life of alignment, presence, and authenticity, has always been waiting for you, inside yourself, quietly, patiently, beautifully. And in that moment of acceptance, of surrender, of presence, you are finally home.